General Hospital will reveal interesting details on Monday, December 24, 2025. First, after days of tirelessly watching over Lucky at the hospital, Elizabeth found herself drawn back into a world she thought she had left behind. Every moment she spent at his bedside, changing his bandages, holding his hand during restless nights, softly humming old lullabies to ease his discomfort, stirred emotions long buried. The hospital room, sterile and quiet, became a space where silence spoke louder than words. She saw in Lucky not just a man recovering from injury, but the father of her child, the love who had once been her partner in both joy and heartbreak. In those quiet, fragile hours, she no longer felt like a nurse, she felt like the woman who once promised to love him through anything. As Lucky's strength returned and his eyes grew clearer with each passing day, so did their conversations. They spoke less of the past and more of what could be. There were no accusations, no regrets exchanged, only an unspoken understanding that the bond between them had not withered, merely lay dormant. Lucky, often hesitant with his emotions, surprised Elizabeth with his sincerity. He told her, without dramatic declarations, that he still felt something powerful, something enduring, for her. It was not the naive love of their youth, but something deeper, shaped by experience and loss, and Elizabeth listened with her whole heart. When the time came for Lucky to leave the hospital, there was a hesitation between them, as if they both feared that the intimacy they shared would vanish outside those walls. But instead of parting ways, Lucky made a decision. He looked at Elizabeth, steady and clear, and told her he wanted to come home, not just to heal physically, but to rebuild what they once had. It was not a proposal, not a plea, just a quiet truth. Elizabeth felt the words settle into her chest like a weight she had been unknowingly carrying, finally lifted. She nodded, eyes misting, and whispered that she wanted the same. Back at home, the energy shifted. Elizabeth prepared the guest room, folding fresh linens, placing a framed photo of Aiden on the nightstand. Every touch was a symbol of welcome, not obligation. Aiden, still too young to understand the depth of what was unfolding, seemed instinctively joyful to have both parents under one roof. The dinners were simple, but filled with laughter. Evenings became a gentle rhythm of shared stories, warm glances, and small moments that hinted at a fragile but growing sense of family. Lucky helped with homework, washed dishes beside Elizabeth, and slowly began to take root in a life he had once stepped away from. There were reminders, of course, glimpses of the pain they had caused each other, ghosts of decisions made during darker times, but neither of them let those memories fester. Instead, they built new ones. Elizabeth would catch Lucky smiling at Aiden from across the room, or feel his presence linger beside her longer than necessary as they stood on the porch, watching their son play. Each gesture, each word, felt like a quiet vow: we are trying again, not because we have forgotten the past, but because we've chosen to forgive it. It was a slow return, but a deliberate one, filled with grace. And so, without grand announcements or dramatic declarations, Elizabeth and Lucky began again. Not as the young lovers who once fell too hard, too fast, but as two people who had learned what it meant to lose each other and decided they didn't want to make that mistake again. Their story, once broken, was being rewritten with gentler hands. And in the middle of it all stood Aiden, unknowingly witnessing the quiet rebirth of a family, surrounded by a love that had found its way back, not in spite of the past, but because of it. Second, Drew entered the press conference room with the calm assurance of a man in control, his suit pristine, his demeanor sharp, and his speech prepared down to every last syllable. The flashes of cameras lit up the room as he made his way to the podium, ready to present an image of strength, vision, and moral clarity. This was meant to be a pivotal moment in his political journey, a carefully orchestrated event to reinforce his role as a respected senator and a future leader. But what Drew didn't know was that this would be the day everything unraveled. Just minutes into his opening remarks, the atmosphere shifted. Without warning, a large screen behind him flickered to life, displaying damning headlines and explicit images. Words blazed across the screen: Senator Drew's private scandal exposed, affair with his grandnephew's wife, followed by another, Dirty Secrets of a Clean Image, Drew and Nina's Past Relationship Revealed. Gasps echoed through the hall as members of the press scrambled to capture the breaking chaos. Whispers turned into outrage, and the carefully maintained illusion of integrity began to collapse in real time. Paralyzed, Drew stood frozen at the podium. The room was no longer a platform for leadership, it had become a tribunal. The image of Willow, the woman at the center of the first allegation, appeared beside headlines claiming she had once shared a bed with him during a dark chapter of their lives. Then came more explosive revelations, tying him to Nina, a woman already known in Port Charles for her polarizing reputation. Drew's face paled as his past, buried and silenced for years, was projected in front of the world with malicious clarity. Questions began to fly from every direction, fast and sharp like arrows. Did you abuse your political power to hide your affair with Willow? What was the nature of your relationship with Nina? Do you still believe you're fit to serve in office? The strength in Drew's voice faltered. The commanding tone he had once wielded was now replaced with fragmented attempts to respond, but every word he spoke only fed the flames. He no longer controlled the room, he was the subject of public humiliation, cornered by a narrative he hadn't prepared for and could no longer escape. He stepped away from the podium in silence, unable to defend himself. As he walked through the crowd, cameras flashing, voices rising, his heart pounded with confusion and fury. He climbed into the back seat of a waiting car, the door slammed shut, and for the first time in years, he lowered his head into his hands, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness. Someone had timed this attack perfectly, someone who knew exactly where and how to strike. And in that moment, Drew realized he had lost not just control, but possibly everything he had worked for. In the days that followed, Drew vanished from public view. His office issued no statements, meetings were cancelled, and the political allies he had once relied on began to distance themselves. The media storm showed no signs of dying down. Online platforms dissected every detail, theories and accusations multiplied by the hour. Behind closed doors, Drew was consumed by the weight of his mistakes and the cruel exposure of his secrets. His career, his public persona, even his closest relationships, all were slipping through his fingers. He had thought his past was behind him, but now it had risen with brutal force, threatening to destroy everything in its path. Third, Nina stood in the silence of her penthouse, the weight of shame pressing down on her shoulders as the fallout of Drew's scandal rippled through every corner of Port Charles. The truth had erupted like a storm, not only about Drew's relationship with Willow, but also about Nina's own entanglement with him. She had kept secrets for far too long, hoping they would fade into obscurity, but now, in the harsh light of exposure, everything felt unforgivable. And when Willow arrived at her doorstep, face flushed with fury and betrayal, Nina knew there would be no easy forgiveness. Willow's voice trembled with anger as she demanded to know why Nina had stayed silent. Why hadn't she spoken up? Why had she let the truth rot in the shadows until it exploded in public, dragging them all into ruin? Nina had no words strong enough to explain her fear, the fear of losing everything, of watching her daughter walk away from her again. She had been a coward, and in the face of Willow's pain, that cowardice felt like a wound that would never heal. When Willow stormed out, leaving Nina in quiet devastation, Nina could do nothing but stand in the aftermath, heart heavy with regret. Willow didn't stop walking until she found herself outside the apartment building where Chase lived. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the door, and when he opened it, the sight of his familiar, steady presence nearly undid her. Chase, who had once loved her with a sincerity she never forgot, stood silently for a moment before stepping aside to let her in. He could see it in her eyes, the pain, the confusion, the desperate need to feel understood. And though he was wrestling with his own sorrow over the slow disintegration of his marriage to Brooke Lynn, he offered her the one thing he still had to give, comfort. They sat in silence at first, side by side on the couch, the room lit only by the soft glow of a nearby lamp. Willow told him everything, the truth about Drew, about Nina's silence, and the feeling of betrayal she couldn't shake. Chase listened without interruption, his hand gently resting on hers. When she paused to collect herself, he shared his own story, the distance that had crept into his relationship with Brooke Lynn, the unspoken disappointments, the weight of unmet expectations. They were two people caught in the wreckage of separate storms, but in that quiet moment, they found solace in each other's vulnerability. There was no need for declarations or promises. The connection between them, once buried beneath time and circumstance, flickered to life again, not as a force of passion, but as something softer, more fragile. A shared understanding, a sense of safety neither of them had felt in a long time. When Willow leaned her head on Chase's shoulder, he didn't move away. Instead, he wrapped his arm around her and let the silence speak for both of them. For now, it was enough. As the night wore on, the possibility of something new, or perhaps something rekindled, began to take shape. In the midst of chaos and heartbreak, Willow and Chase found each other again. And while neither knew what the future held, the warmth between them was undeniable. It wasn't a grand reunion, but a quiet return to something real. Something that just might grow stronger, one moment at a time. Finally, Marco arrived at Windmere under the cover of night, his presence quiet yet calculating. He wasn't there for pleasantries or curiosity, he came with purpose, following a strategy carefully crafted by his father, the ruthless and manipulative Sidwell. What the residents of Port Charles didn't know was that Marco was Sidwell's son, born from his secret and complicated relationship with Natalia Ramirez. For years, Marco had remained in the shadows, but now, he was stepping into the light to carry out a mission that would place two of the town's most respected men in serious danger, Lucas and Sonny. Sidwell, a dangerous figure with ties to organized crime, had decided it was time to expand his influence in Port Charles. To do so, he needed to manipulate and dismantle key players, and he was more than willing to use his own blood to do it. Marco's assignment was clear: infiltrate Lucas's life, earn his trust, and uncover every vulnerability he could exploit. With his charming demeanor and intelligence, Marco quickly gained Lucas's attention. What started as a casual acquaintance soon evolved into deeper conversations, shared moments, and growing trust, all while Marco secretly gathered information for his father. At the same time, Sidwell unleashed another pawn into the game, Natalia. Though long estranged from Sidwell, she remained bound to him through secrets, fear, and unfinished business. Her role was just as dangerous. She was to approach Sonny Corinthos, the powerful mob figure who stood as a potential threat to Sidwell's rise. Natalia returned to Port Charles under the guise of reconnection, but beneath her elegant exterior was a woman on edge, fully aware that one wrong move could lead to Sonny discovering her true motive. Lucas, trusting and compassionate, had no idea he was being watched so closely, nor did Sonny suspect that Natalia's return had more to do with manipulation than reconciliation. But as the web tightened, it became clear that Sidwell was orchestrating a campaign of control, using his son and his former lover as weapons in his silent war against Port Charles's strongest men. Marco's danger didn't come only from his skills or loyalty to Sidwell, it came from his ability to blend in, to charm, and to act without hesitation. Though Marco began to feel flickers of doubt as he spent more time around Lucas, perhaps even a trace of guilt, those feelings were fleeting. He had been raised by Sidwell to be precise, focused, and above all, loyal. Any crack in his facade could mean failure. Natalia, meanwhile, struggled with her own inner conflict. While she was a master manipulator, being near Sonny reignited memories of her past and the fear of being caught in the crossfire. The deeper she went, the more she questioned whether she could truly carry out Sidwell's plan. As tensions mount, the quiet surface of Port Charles begins to ripple with danger. Marco and Natalia are no longer just pawns, they are active threats, deeply embedded in the lives of their targets. If Lucas and Sonny don't uncover the truth soon, they could become victims of a twisted plot driven by power, revenge, and secrets that were never meant to surface. The question is no longer whether Sidwell will strike, it's when. Get ready as the drama in Port Charles reaches explosive new heights in the upcoming episodes. With Marco now secretly targeting Lucas under Sidwell's orders, and Natalia drawing dangerously close to Sonny, the stage is set for a web of deception and betrayal. Hidden agendas, secret bloodlines, and emotional manipulation collide as Sidwell's master plan begins to take shape. Marco's charm and intelligence mask a far more dangerous intent, while Natalia walks a tightrope between loyalty, fear, and unresolved feelings. As both Lucas and Sonny unknowingly lower their guards, the threat surrounding them grows darker and more personal with every passing moment. But secrets never stay buried for long in Port Charles. As truths begin to unravel, relationships will be shaken to their core, and familiar faces may be forced to choose sides. Marco's internal conflict could either destroy the mission or make him more dangerous than ever, while Natalia's interactions with Sonny may ignite suspicions that bring her world crashing down. With Sidwell pulling strings from the shadows, the clock is ticking before all hell breaks loose. Don't miss the next episodes, where every moment counts, and one wrong move could change everything.